midterms are upon us, and guess what? All of the things you're going to hear in the next couple of days, the next week or two, they're going to be really, really important into their attempts at swaying your vote, particularly as it relates to the economy. So let's unpack some of the deception before they actually fool you. A really hot topic is obviously the economy. Right now, so many people are questioning, are we in a recession? Are we not? What happens next? And this is going to be a massive amount of political fodder for the election. As a matter of fact, today, November 1st, the day that we're recording this, 10 Democratic representatives have now written to Jerome Powell, the Secretary of the Fed, and suggested that his policy is going to swing unemployment the other way. But yet, on the exact same day, today, November 1st, there's articles out saying that the hiring situation for companies has improved and there's a surplus of jobs. The job market is actually going the other way. It's getting stronger, not weaker, despite record Fed interest rate increases in a short period of time. And if you don't remember, that was a 25, a 50 basis point, a 75, a 75, and a 75. And the overwhelming majority of probability is tomorrow, November 2nd, there will be an additional 75 basis point increase. All these things have caused a very slow increase in mortgage rates. And as a result, the home market has slowed down and people are starting to freak out saying, what's going to happen is the market's going to shift the other way. Well, if you remember from early 2022, there was a lot of fear that the Fed interest rate increases were going to crash the market. And we saw a 20 to 25% drop in the stock market and overall values. And now people like Jamie Dimon have subsequently come out and said, guess what? Hold on tight. There's going to be an additional 20 to 25% drop in values. So clearly the Fed is not going to be warded off by the thought of the stock market's values coming down. They're not going to be stopped on their plan to help control inflation and bring it down to the 2 to 3% target rate by the fear of increasing unemployment. As a matter of fact, that is the intended consequence. That is not an accident. The Fed has two jobs: regulating monetary policy, which controls things like inflation, and employment, jobs. And they basically work on a scale and a fulcrum back and forth. When you get one in balance, the other one should be in balance too. And then when one moves, you have to move the needle back and forth. So expect to see the Democrats say that there's a possibility that this could go way the other way. Expect to hear Republicans say that things are tight right now, but they could make it better and they'll bring the job market back in line, but yet all these things will change to the benefit if you vote their way. And frankly, voting either way doesn't really matter. I am not politically aligned with any of them in this matter, in this regard, and I'll tell you why. It's because the Fed is supposed to act independent of politics. Yet you have a former Fed secretary like Janet Yellen, who has since come out and criticized Jerome Powell in a number of circumstances. Yet she has admittedly been wrong as recently as June of 2022, where she came out and said that she seriously underestimated the impact of the factors that were leading to inflation in the market. And even Jerome Powell at one point called the inflation transitory that we were experiencing and said that he could provide a possible soft landing. Well, I think we can all agree that a soft landing is no longer possible. And despite this political rhetoric, Janet Yellen, a Democrat who happens to support Democratic beliefs and seemingly was doing so at the time, which was in support of what was the White House's Democratic reference that 2 quarters of negative GDP growth was not in fact an actual recessionary economy, even though the last 10 recessions, literally 10, were declared after 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. So there's going to be a lot of this back and forth in the midterms and certainly leading up to 1 year from now, the November 5th, 2024 election. And it's going to be all over the news. And by the time we get there, we're going to know what happened in 2023, where I believe that the Fed has telegraphed enough information so far for us to know that they're going to hold rates for a prolonged period of time and see what happens as they try to get inflation below 8% and certainly to a 2 to 3% target rate. But one of the things I like to point out to people is that during the Great Recession, which is the second largest recessionary economy the United States has ever experienced, second to the Great Depression, you saw unemployment increase after October 2009, the technical end of the recessionary economy, to 7%. And if that's where it was at post-recession, and yet here we are at about 3.6% unemployment, almost double where we currently sit today, we have a long road to go. And if you look at some of the numbers that have been projected by people like Janet Yellen and even people who are saying that this could be a huge swing, they're only suggesting this huge swing could actually be a rise from 3.6% to 4.4% projected unemployment, which is tantamount to 1 million or 2 jobs or so in the economy difference. That delta is not big enough to scare off the Fed from their course. And we really need to take great deals of pause when it comes to the political environment and the things that we're hearing and look at the bigger macro picture. Are these people saying the things that they're saying to win votes? And I go back to where we started this video with the 10 politicians, the Democratic politicians who sent a letter to the Fed Secretary Jerome Powell saying that he was acting way too aggressive with these Fed hikes. We were going to swing unemployment the other way. Do they really believe that? Or is that a way to make you, the voter, feel like they have your interest at heart and you should vote in a Democratic, not Republican way because that party wants to protect your jobs? Look at the bigger macro picture and don't let them abusing our own lack of financial literacy and our own lack of education on what's really going on and the real directive of things like the Fed to be weaponized against us to get us to vote a certain way when their real intention is not necessarily to help us in the way they state. Because here's the reality. In order for inflation to come down, unemployment must go up. Yes, your home values will come down. Yes, there's a supply shortage of homes and there's going to be challenges when there's demand picks back up, but how long will that be? And as builders start to talk about how they're getting stressed and they start to pull out of the market, and as the National Association of Realtors continues on this housing recession they've already declared, you can expect to see that additional point, inflation, now housing, obviously jobs, all these things we talked about. If you watch this channel, I advise you to subscribe, to follow, and to repeatedly come back. Not because I really want your views, although I do, but because we talk about all these issues with no bias and we help you see through it. Hopefully this brings you value, and hopefully you come back for more. We'll see you soon.